Hello, I'm Tim Crosby, and I'm glad you're here and going to share with you what's been on my mind here recently, and that's banjos. Banjos. Here's kind of where it came from. I read a news story just this morning about Rhiannon Giddens, who she's putting on a festival in North Carolina next April, and it's probably going to feature a lot of banjos because it's the 20th anniversary of the Black Banjo Reclamation Project, which was part of the reason that the Carolina Chocolate Drops got started. And banjo history, catch a screenshot of that, get this book. It's the definitive history of the banjo from its earliest days. And the other thing, Kathy and I were just in Nashville, Tennessee last week, and we got a chance to go to the Country Music Hall of Fame Museum, where one of Rhiannon Giddens' banjos is on display. And, what most of us think about as the banjo, Earl Scruggs' banjo was on display. And John Hartford's banjo was on display. And Bernie Leadon, the original banjo player with the Eagles, his banjo was there as well. So I want to talk about my little banjo family here and introduce you to some of banjos. So most of us think of the banjo as bluegrass banjo. It's a modern day version of it. It has a resonator, and it's usually played with finger picks and a thumb pick and, Foggy Mountain Breakdown. Or dueling banjos. Those things. Played with a pick, played on a banjo, usually with a resonator, and that's a really cool way to play the banjo. But there's more. The picks down over here. We'll go back to the direct ancestor to bluegrass banjo. Usually has an open back, doesn't have that resonator on the back of it, and it's usually not played with picks. A banjo like this is often thought of as clawhammer banjo. It's a style that's played with your fingernails in a completely different way of moving your hand. While we were in Nashville, I ran into John McEwen, who plays both bluegrass banjo and clawhammer banjo. In fact, he's the guy who taught me how to play clawhammer banjo. And it sounds like this. That real Appalachian, old-timey sound. It's still a 5-string banjo. That's important because we're going to talk about banjos with different numbers of strings. But the banjo, really what is the most characteristic thing about it is it has this 5th string, this short string here that you play with your thumb, and no matter what else you do with the rest of the strings, there's always this high, lonesome, drony sound. It's a 5-string banjo. This is probably the banjo. But over the years in the banjo's history, it went off into other directions. Back around the turn of the last century, here's one other banjo I wanted to show you. It's a little smaller version of that same open back. It's called a pony banjo or sometimes a travel banjo because now it's 2 frets shorter than these big banjos, makes it easier to travel with, and it's tuned to a higher pitch, usually A or D, so that you can play along with fiddle players without a capo. Around the turn of the last century, though, the banjo was in the 1890s, actually the late 1800s, everybody had a banjo. The cowboys had banjos out on the range. Every parlor had a banjo, and banjos got really, really popular. And then tango music, Argentinian tango music got really popular. And mandolin was also popular, and the banjo players said, yeah, we really like this tango music, but our instruments aren't loud enough. Can we have our own banjo? And so the 4-string banjo was invented. Which is essentially, this is a tenor banjo. There's another 4-string banjo that I don't have a copy of, but it's tuned just like a mandolin. And this is the banjo now that is the most popular banjo in Irish traditional music, because you can play all the same tunes that the fiddle or the mandolin or the bouzouki play, and you can play it on banjo, so you get that banjo sound. So this one is tuned, there's 2 tunings to it. You get in touch with me if you want to talk about it and geek out about the different tunings. This one is Irish strung, so it's octave mandolin, G, D, A, E, and you play it with a flat pick, and you play tunes rather than chords or licks. So so that's the tenor banjo. Well, then during the early part of the 1900s, things started spreading out. There's a guitar banjo. It's actually a guitar, but with a banjo body. And one of my all-time favorites from the 19-teens and the 1920s is the ukulele banjo. It's a ukulele, but it has a banjo body, and you can play all kinds of things on it. You can play that rackety kind of 1920s sort of thing. You can claw hammer it. So that's all the banjos I have to show you. There's even several versions of a banjo-ish fiddle, but that's a different culture and a whole other discussion. But the banjo, there's lots of them. 5-string banjos, you've got your bluegrass style with the resonator on the back. You've got your old-timey style that's open back. You can play either way on either one. And then there's the 4-string banjos that you play with a plectrum. The other one that I don't have is a longer version used in jazz. It's the banjo. And I'm glad you're here. Yeah, Tim Crosby Music. Get in touch with me.